That was the keynote by BlackBerry, and we now move on to our next keynote address, which is by Trend Micro. Building cyber resilient enterprise is what is the topic. Ms. Sharda Tikku, who's technical director at Trend Micro India, will be addressing us all on building cyber resilient enterprise.
Hi everyone, I'm Shraddha Tekku, Technical Director for Micro India and SARC, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to build a cyber resilient enterprise. Now, before we dwell into the details, the life of CISO in current times is quite challenging. There is business transformation happening at one end. We are seeing work from home and hybrid work environments taking the place. Of course, introducing a lot of complexity. The way the network was accessed is getting changed. In terms of visibility, there has always been an issue, and now with cloud adoption, this issue is all the more becoming more and more active. And on top of it, of course, the attacker behavior is also not becoming any easier. They're also becoming quite steady. So it's a perfect storm that we are seeing enterprises are facing. Now, what has also happened is that there is a perfect storm at one end, and at the other end, we are hearing a lot of noise and I'm not sure if it is right to call it a noise. We are hearing about a lot of technology terminologies like SASE, Zero Trust, XDR, CASB, EDR, UEBA. Are these the technologies that will help us, combat this particular storm? Now, before we discuss this, let's go into a little bit of basics. Okay, what has changed nowadays is that the network architecture, the way we do the business has completely changed, right? Earlier, the center of universe used to be data centers, whether it is your branch office or if it is your users accessing the internet, or it is your contractors, third-party vendors or partners. All of them would access data via getting into your data center, and that's where the perimeter was of very much importance, and your center of universe was actually your data center, right? And it was thick and static. Now, what has happened is that all of that has changed. The way we are doing the business has changed, and center of universe has now become an entity. When I say entity, it is actually a device. It can actually be a user. It can be an application. So whatever you are accessing, that has become a center of universe, that entity. That's where the security has to be tightly close to it. So gone are the days where data is concentrated in one data center. Now it is sporadically spread out. And that's where it becomes very important for us to understand that how do we, in this changing business model, how do we take care of the security? Talking about security, there are major headlines that have hit in the last couple of months, whether we talk about SolarWinds attack, we talk about ransomware attack, Kaseya ransomware, or there has been the most recently the Windows print nightmare. All of these attacks are bringing our focus back to one thing, which is vulnerability, which is exploits, and then the malwares that are using these vulnerabilities to spread. Now, talking about vulnerabilities, malwares, and exploits, I think these are the basics that have to be addressed. So vulnerability management is not something new, but with this attack surface increasing multifold, maybe the way we deal with the vulnerability or the way we do the vulnerability management also needs to be relooked. So one thing is something that we really can do is we can prioritize the threat landscape. So how do we do that? It's quite simple. We know there are all disclosed threats for which we know there are IOCs, threats for which we know there are patches available and there are signatures available, and so you go and right away you take care of those threats. But then there are certain threats which are relevant to your environment, right? Basis on the sector that you operate in, the kind of business model do you have, the kind of applications is used. There are certain threats which are relevant to your environment. Now, then there are certain threats which are widely exploited inside in the wild. What I mean to say is that there are certain vulnerabilities where the extent of exploitation of those vulnerability is quite high. Now, what are the things that we should prioritize? The things that have to be prioritized is this intersection. So threats that are relevant to your environments and threats that are widely exploited in the wild this intersection is something that has to be focused. This intersection is the one that needs to be mitigated first, so that your risk exposure to an attack is minimized. Now, talking about risk exposure and mitigation, what has been, let's look at the journey for detection and response that has been for the enterprises, since last few years. Now, we all know about good old EPP. EPP has been around for eons now, and of course, it has done a damn good job. We realized that industry wanted something more. It was, while EPP was a good preventive control, there was a need for a detection mechanism to be at the endpoint level, and hence EDR came into the game, which was giving good enough visibility of what is happening at the endpoint level, and so that all of these threats could be taken care of proactively. What happened now is that while EDR is giving a is doing a good job, enterprises are grappling with the situation wherein they are finding that they are finding that the need to do this detection and response on more places beyond endpoints. That's where there is a need for adding a detection layer at the email level, at the cloud level, at the data center level, at the network level, perhaps at the IoT level, and that's why the ambit of detection and response has now increased to include more sensors, and that's where XDR came into the picture, which means that it is basically giving you detection and response much beyond EDR. Now, that's not it. We are now beyond XDR. We are now talking about zero trust and SASE because of the changing business model, because of the cloud adoption, rapid digital adoption, and whatnot. The ways that we are working in. The need is to have zero trust and SASE framework also closely working with XDR. Now, before I go further ahead, the term XDR has not been new. It has been there for a lot of, I think, from 2018 was the time when XDR term was coined, but it has gained a momentum more recently, right? And then there is a lot of discussion going around. Hey, how is XDR going to fit into my already running SOC, which is running a SIEM, which is running a SOAR? Is it going to replace it? Is it going to complement it? If it is going to replace it, then what do I do with my existing investments? If it is going to complement it, how? I see there are a lot of overlapping features. So all of these are things that are basically getting debated, getting asked as this whole ecosystem is maturing. Now, Forrester has come up with a very good research that they have done on the landscape overview of around 29 XDR providers. So looking at the maturity of the XDR service providers, they kind of bucketed these into the late stage, the growth stage, the early stage, it depends on the kind of customer base the vendor has, the number of years the vendor has been around, also the maturity of the product, so on and so forth. And of course, Trend Micro is there in the late stage, which means that the product is quite matured and growth, and it has good feature set and capabilities. But what is another thing that is interesting is the types of XDR that Forrester has defined, which is clearly articulated this confusion that has put in our minds. Right now, there are three types of XDR that Forrester has brought up. One is the native XDR. So native XDR is the XDR that has a tighter alignment with the vendor's own portfolio. Trend Micro is a native XDR. So I have my own sensors in the endpoint, email, network, cloud, everywhere, and then I deliver XDR capabilities on top of it. Then there is something called as hybrid XDR. Hybrid XDR is an XDR model that relies on integration with third parties. So, for example, I have an EDR solution, but if you want a detection and response at the web, at email, at network, I will integrate with APIs at all of these levels. There are no native sensors. Third type is the security analytics platform. These are good old age-old SIEM and SOAR vendors that are building analytics capability on top of them and then delivering XDR functionalities. Now, nothing is good or bad. I'm not trying to advocate one XDR over another, but then there are definitely certain clear distinctions that Forrester has laid out for a native XDR. One is the richness of the telemetry for the native XDR is quite high. The second is the native response capability. So when we talk about native XDR, so I have to deal with the sensors that I own. So the kind of integration I can do with my own sensors will be quite deep, right? And hence my response capabilities will also be evolved. It will definitely be simplicity will be definitely high in native XDR, because I don't have to rely on third-party APIs for me to deliver the basic XDR capabilities. I don't have to worry about the fact that what if the version gets upgraded and the APIs break. All of that is taken care of because these are my own native sensors. And of course, last but least, that is mentioned here is time to value, which is to say that how quickly would a enterprise see the value in investing on this particular product, which means to say how quickly are we able to see the effectiveness of the product working, which is something which is quite high in native XDR as compared to hybrid XDR. With this background, it gives me pleasure to introduce Trend Micro Vision One, which is a evolving threat defense platform, and we have multiple I would say solutions which are part of the Vision One platform. Of course, the core remains the XDR. It is a native XDR, and along with the native XDR capabilities, we also have added risk visibility, the policy and agent and policy management, sensor management can be done from this platform. And this platform also helps enterprise achieve that trust and insight. We'll see that in the subsequent slide. And this whole Trend Micro Vision One platform then integrates with SIM and SOAR and gives a true platform-based approach to an enterprise. How this Trend Micro XDR Vision One works is that if you can see, there are multiple sensors here at the endpoint level, email level, cloud, network level. All of these sensors pump in the activity data into the XDR data lake. In XDR data lake, there are a lot of detection models that come into the action. They work on this particular telemetry data, and then give the SOC analyst the much needed high fidelity alert, an actionable alert, and it actually gives you that contextual visibility. Not to mention, we all know the importance of MITRE mapping. Whatever techniques are observed into a particular enterprise, all those techniques are mapped to a MITRE framework. There is also a threat intel collaboration that this platform delivers, which is by checking whatever IOCs are getting exploited in the wild. There is a proactive sweep that happens on the data lake telemetry, and if there is a hit, the alert is generated. So all of these methods are put inside the Trend Micro Vision One to make it a very robust platform, which basically makes the job of a SOC analyst much more easier. So since we are gathering so much insight, we are gathering so much so rich telemetry, it became natural for us to build a zero trust risk insight, and it became very natural for us to, once we have the insight into the security, into the entity, once we have insight onto the kind of reputation the entity had, the kind of behavior the entity is doing, we are then in a position to control the access of a particular entity. So that's where we have built zero trust risk insight and zero trust secure access along with XDR in Trend Micro Vision One. Before we talk about zero trust risk insight in detail, so when we talk about zero trust, by definition, Forrester in 2009 said that trust is a vulnerability. You should never trust, we should always verify. So there should be a continuous assessment of risk and trust that should happen, and that is what even Gartner says. Now, keeping in mind this particular philosophy and the way Trend Micro Vision One delivers zero trust is by keeping in mind these two aspects that you see right now. There is zero trust risk insight, and then there is zero trust secure access. What I mean to say is that whether it is a user or a device or any other application or entity, I will know the risk that this particular entity carries. How? Because I will have my XDR sensors. That XDR sensors will help me determine, basis on what this identity has been up to, what this entity has been up to. I will get to know what are the what are the risk that this entity is carrying. Based on that, there are certain scores that we give to a particular entity. Say, for example, I got to know that this particular device has accessed an email from two different geographical location, and the user of this particular device also seems to be carrying another mobile phone wherein a known malware has been found. So my risk score will probably increase. And then basis these, I can create certain dynamic rules. Basis the risk ratings, I can create certain dynamic rules which can then help me allow or deny the access to a network. Or I would want that this particular entity looks fishy, so I may want this entity to go through maybe a second level of authentication. So I can maybe maybe I can isolate, I can do a multi-factor authentication, or I can completely throw out the entity from my network. So this is how we build zero trust along with Vision One. And we're not stopping here. You will soon see Vision One platform. Of course, it is having zero trust network access. It will have CASB, secure web gateway, EPP, and XDR is something that is already a part of the package here. So what I'm, in summary, what I want to say is when we talk about zero trust and XDR, they have to work together. They cannot work as two separate islands. This unique approach of XDR providing you extended detection and response, correlated visibility, threat detection of the entire enterprise, and this rich telemetry then feeding into the zero trust approach, which helps you gain more visibility. So and then in turn, zero trust as a framework is again powering into the XDR by slowing down the attacker, because if I'm not giving the entry to an attacker into my enterprise, I am slowing down the attacker. So this is how we are seeing XDR and zero trust working in tandem and defending the enterprise. So we're talking about cyber resilient enterprise. We're talking about cyber resilient framework. What are the different building blocks of this particular framework? We all know we identify what are your key entities based on the criticality of the business, the servers, the workloads, the assets, everything. The identification is important. First and foremost is prevent. You prevent the threat. If you're not able to prevent the threat, detect the threat. Ensure that there are enough measures available, enough investment done to detect the threat. Once we are able to detect the threat, we can then respond effectively. And once we are able to respond the threat, we should be able to recover from an incident more effectively. And then maybe we should also be able to predict the threat. What should also be able to do the threat prediction. And all of this is possible only when we are having a risk visibility. Risk visibility across identifying, prevent, detect, respond, recover, across all of this stage, right? We talked about vulnerability prioritization, trying to know, what is a vulnerability that should be prioritized. Maybe a vulnerability that is relevant to me because of the kind of business I am in, and something that is getting exploited in the wild. That is something that I have to prioritize. Prioritizing the threat landscape, quantifying the threat landscape, attaching a risk score to each entity or to an enterprise in general will help you, devise a framework for the cyber resilience. And that's what that is exactly what Trend Micro Vision One is working towards. We are working towards developing a platform which currently gives you XDR, risk visibility. You can build trust and insight, and then moving forward, this platform is evolving, like we said. So we are going to add more and more modules to this platform as and when it's relevant in the times, in the current times. Another good thing is that as enterprises onboard Vision One as a platform, we are also proud to share that Trend Micro is the first one to have this completely hosted out of India. So since December 2020, Trend Micro Vision One platform is hosted in India data center, and so is Trend Micro Cloud One, which are the two biggest platforms that Trend Micro is investing in and providing you the customers. So with this, I would like to end my session, and thank you for listening to me. Have a great day.